you playing?
Hello, and welcome to What the Bleep Are You Playing? A podcast where we play a game, many times bad, and tell you why the bleep we played it. I'm Hadoken Sean. This is Shoryuken Thomas. And also Bad Box Art Mason. And we're playing... Street Fighter X Tekken. So how you guys doing?
I'm, as you know, both of you guys know, I'm not really that big into fighting games, but so it wasn't until like before we started recording that I'm like, this is actually going to be a lot more interesting than I thought it would be.
This game it's definitely the best reviewed game we've played. 9 out of 10 is its average. Arguably might be the best game we've played at this point.
Yeah. It's personally probably not my favorite game that we've played, but probably the best functioning one.
We played surprisingly, when we looked at the list initially, we were like, wow, we didn't play as many fighting games as I thought we were. And now I think back, I'm like, we've played a lot of fighting games when you think about it.
Yeah. Especially if you...
Who's surprised?
Especially if you count, like, some of the non-traditional ones, like Marvel Nemesis.
Or WWE.
Or WWE.
Which,
yeah.
You picked the most fighting game WWE out there.
Oh, what a surprise. The wrestling fan and the fighting game fan picked the most fighting game of the wrestling game.
But
Not a
this was such an ambitious, interesting idea to come together and mold the two franchises together in each style. I'm sure it took a lot of legal tape and paperwork and all them step out things to finally get the to finalize. Hey, we're gonna actually let these franchises be together, and with the agreement that the other was going to be in the other style. Street Fighter X Tekken, so Tekken in Street Fighter style, and then it was going to be Tekken X Street Fighter in Tekken style.
What do you mean was? That's still happening, isn't it?
I mean, look, it's never been canceled.
Yeah, technically never been canceled. It was for a little bit, and then 3 days later they backtracked and said, no, it's still on. And it's like, what?
You know what? Every single Game Awards, every single E3, I'm like, Tekken Cross Street Fighter, it's going to happen. This is the one. This is the one.
It's going to be 2042, and eventually we'll get it.
Considering...
This is going to be the one, Shuddy.
Considering we, dating ourselves to when we are right now, that we have big announcements of new Tekken and new Street Fighter coming out. Now would be the time to revive it, honestly.
Be the time.
This would be the year with both of them kind of popular big hits. They're both going to be at the forefront
The fact that both of them are going to be smash hits.
Mm-hmm.
Street Fighter 6 is definitely going to sell gangbusters.
Mm-hmm.
And Tekken 7 is the highest selling non-smash fighting game of all time. So Tekken 8 is definitely going to...
And before the final Smash Bros, you could argue that this is one of the most ambitious crossovers in fighting game in a lot of ways because it was two entire fighting game franchises merging together with some really bonkers guest characters.
Yeah.
Just some bonkers guest characters.
Which I think we'll get to later on.
We'll get a little bit when we talk about the gameplay and the character
That'll
stuff.
Be hilarious.
Street Fighter Cross Tekken, I said X Tekken, but it's Street Fighter Cross Tekken. It's a crossover fighting game developed by Capcom and released in March 2012 for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. In May, it was released for the Microsoft Windows. And in October, it got a Vita release.
So what did Vita owners do all year?
Not much, because Vitas were just ignored.
Yeah.
I have a Vita and I own 3 games, Mason.
What a great investment. We've
already had the conversation on one of the podcasts. I don't remember which one it was when we talked about...
What's next? What's next? Are you going to buy a Google Stadia now?
No.
You're going to buy into Google Stadia?
No. Eventually Sony's going to realize that their handhelds would do really well and that they should just really support them.
Uh-huh.
One of these days.
One of these days. The game features characters from both Street Fighter franchise and Namco's Tekken series. I don't know why they said franchise on one and series in the other. Why not just say both franchise? Anyway, Sean argues with the internet here today. In the game, each player selects...
What other day?
It's a day that ends in day. In the game, each player selects 2 characters respectively and face others as duos in tag team fighting matches, which was something pretty common in Tekken at this point, seeing as Tekken Tag was
Tekken
pretty
Tag
big.
was big, and I believe Tekken Tag 2 was right around the corner.
So that's not surprising. In addition to the game's multiplayer modes, the game also featured a single-player story mode with the plot revolving around a mysterious object called the Pandora.
Which is exactly what you think it is.
Exactly, it's Pandora's
box.
It's Pandora's box.
Yes.
It's exactly what it is.
The game is the product of a partnership between Namco and Capcom that previously produced the role-playing game Namco x Capcom, as Street Fighter Cross Tekken was made by Capcom. With Namco being involved, I can read, I swear, more in the licensing of the Tekken cast. So Namco really didn't do anything on the development side in this, which I found interesting because you would think that they would kind of like together be a lot of it, but more Namco was like, here's our roster, now you give us your roster, and we'll make a game there that has never been made.
Right.
Because again, it was just kind of going to be a little bit of a trade-off, and then, yeah.
Now at this time, Street Fighter had been developed by the company Dimps, which I think we'll talk a little bit more later, but we've talked about them before as they developed Budokai, but Street Fighter, that was the company that was making Street Fighter at that time. They had just done Street Fighter 4, or Super Street Fighter 4 and Super Street Fighter 4 3D Edition. Surprised the 3D edition is the 3DS.
Oh, really?
They'd done both of those.
I believe the most recent Tekken game was 6, maybe 5.
I think it was 6. I could be because 7 wasn't that far down the pike. Because 7's
No,
been
7 was a PS4 game.
yeah. So 7 was a little bit coming down, but they were clearly mapping out 7 at that, or at least getting the early stages of what they were going to do with 7 at that point. So both of these franchises were in the middle of at least decent games, and
Well, Street Fighter 4 brought the 2D fighting genre back.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little decent of a game.
So like they've got a lot of good things. So it's like this seemed like the perfect time for these franchises to come together. It wasn't like they both were dying franchises at the point. It was like, no, this is the perfect time. We're kind of fighting games are coming back in a lot of ways.
Was Street Fighter 4 before the Mortal Kombat reboot?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mortal Kombat was 2011. Street Fighter 4 was 2008.
Oh, wow. Damn.
Yeah. So.
Because when I think of like revitalizing 2D fighters, my mind goes to Mortal Kombat, but I guess Street Fighter. I guess it was Street Fighter.
Street
Because
Fighter,
obviously,
Street Fighter 4 brought it back because up until that point it was all 3D fighters. It was Tekken. It was the Mortal Kombat 3D era. It was Soul Calibur. That's all it was. 2D games were dead, essentially. But Street Fighter 4, Dimps was like, hey, let's make the most kick-ass 2D fighter of the past couple, years. And it just blew up and relaunched the entire 2D fighting genre.
I know Street Fighter definitely had a lull in the middle of where they weren't bringing out good games. I know Mortal Kombat had a lull where they weren't bringing out particularly good games.
Yeah.
Has Tekken ever really had a lull where games were bad? Like, obviously, there's dips in quality, but,
There's dips in quality, but even, their worst received game is probably 4, and it's still fun.
4's still fun. I liked 4.
Tekken, in terms of mainline games, Tekken has never really had a bad game.
It's possible that
it's had some baffling decisions in some of the games, but not...
Unlike Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, which started in 2D before going it, Tekken has always been a 3D fighter. And a lot of the lull of those two was trying to figure out where to go from the 2D to 3D. So it's possible because they didn't have that, they could always at least fall back on, hey, we've at least made this game, we're going to repackage it a little bit,
Right.
So that might be why that of the big 3 fighting franchises. Sorry, King of Fighters.
Yeah, no, we know King of Fighters ain't...
It is
I mean...
maybe in Thomas's heart, but...
Yeah, in my heart, it's number 1. No. King of Fighters is a very passionate fan base, but it's a small fan base.
Yes.
So, I mean, King of Fighters 14 was really popular. 15, I think, was? I'm not sure. but it's kind of getting bigger. But the big three are still Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Tekken.
Yeah. And I think Tekken not having a lull, or as much of a lull as the other ones, is kind of interesting. Considering it also has got 7 mainline ones.
It's been around.
Yeah, especially considering Mortal Kombat stopped having numbered entries around 4.
Yeah.
And because after 4, it was Deadly Alliance.
That's right.
Street Fighter has had plenty of games, but only 6 main entries.
Look, they repackaged Street Fighter 2
Yeah,
over and over and over again.
Street
About
Fighter 2,
75% of Street Fighter games are Street Fighter 2.
Yeah. It's a bunch of repackages.
They repackaged that game so many times.
So many times. You packaged it, you patented it, and now you're selling it. You're selling it.
Yeah. But, it makes sense that these two franchises would cross more than, say, like, Mortal Kombat. Neither of these franchises would cross.
Because everybody wanted Mortal Kombat / Street Fighter in the 90s.
Yeah.
I cannot see that working.
Story-wise, it's a lot harder. And it's, again, these two franchises really fit together pretty easily.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I couldn't see Rio pulling out someone's entrails. I just can't see that, nor do I want to see that.
Nor do you want to see them making the PG version of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't want to.
You don't want Mortal Kombat versus DCU.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was.
Yeah.
You don't want him wandering down the characters because then you get that, and that was bad.
So, I played this game on Steam. You guys both played it on PS3.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe slight differences or things like that, but, like, the gameplay's really good in this game.
Yeah.
It's very Tekken Tag in, like, a lot of the styles, but very, like, in a lot of the way it's all set up, but it's very, very classic Street Fighter in feel.
Yeah, let's get that out of the way. This is honestly possibly peak 2D fighter for the PS3 era.
Especially, in that modern type era, in the PS3 there. PS3, we talk a lot about the PlayStation systems having bad fighting games. The PS3 is kind of where it started to figure out, like, and the majority, like, the big ones that came out were good.
It definitely got better.
Like, PlayStation has a lot of bad. It does have a lot of good. PlayStation 2 is a very mixed bag at times, with some elite games and a lot of, oh wow, that's a game that came out on it.
You get Tekken 5 and then you get Beatdown.
Exactly. Whereas I think on the PS3 a lot of the main lines worked.
Yeah.
A lot of the big ones. I mean, you're still gonna get your Mortal Kombat versus DCs occasionally, but like,
hell, you could argue Soul Calibur 4 was a bit of a misstep. But
see, I actually posted the clip from our Soul Edge one talking about all the Soul Caliburs, and I had like 2 comments immediately. They were like, "Soul Calibur 4 the best," So like,
well, they're
people
fucking wrong.
People love that game. So like,
I'm joking. You're entitled to your opinion unless it's wrong.
the wrong opinion is if you said Soul Calibur 5 is the best.
We're gonna make someone mad.
Look, it's what Thomas does.
Look, no one should think Soul Calibur 5 is the best. And if there's some motherfucker who's like, oh no, Soul Calibur 5 is the best, you're wrong. Like, you have a wrong opinion. Like, jokingly, no, you're objectively fucking wrong.
I did not play any of the story mode on this game, on it. Did you play it? So Thomas is the only one who played story mode.
I just played the arcade.
Yeah, I played a lot of arcade, because the combat's really fun.
Yeah.
Like, we'll get to kind of the sales here in a minute and things like that and how it did, but like, I feel like if this had been a more popular game, I feel like there would have been a big competitive scene for this thing.
Oh yeah.
Because I know that Street Fighter 5 had a pretty good sized competitive scene. So
Street Fighter 5 had a pretty good sized competitive scene. Tekken 7 has a really big competitive scene.
I don't know. I just play Tekken bowling. This is going to be a running gag in every podcast that I don't play Tekkens. I only play bowling.
Does that have a competitive scene?
It should.
No, not that I know of. It might be like a little break. Like, Daigo has just finished beating someone's ass, and then it's like, all right, let's go
bowling.
Tekken bowling.
So since we didn't really play the story mode, I guess it's Thomas to say what the story mode's like.
I mean, basically the story mode, from what I've played, is just kind of an arcade mode kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not technically a story mode. It's you pick your 2 characters, you play, and then you get their ending.
As you chase Pandora's box.
Yeah, pretty much. Like it's very much. They call it a story mode. It's an arcade mode kind of thing.
Which is fine. Arcade
Yeah, I was gonna say, like,
modes being set up as story is perfectly fine to me.
Yeah, I don't really mind that. I prefer that with my fighting games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's fine when they have these big ass NetherRealm style stories, but other than NetherRealm, no other studio has done it well. So, honestly, if you just stick with arcade games, arcade modes, or do what Street Fighter 6 is doing, and kind of do a new thing, then that's fine by me. So, yeah. And to be honest, the story mode, there's not much story in these story modes. There's an intro cutscene and an ending cutscene and a rival cutscene. It's very similar to Street Fighter 4 structure. And that makes sense because Dimps developed both this and Street Fighter 4.
It's really interesting. I'm going to finish this on the plot, and then we're going to get into Dimps because I have a lot to say. But it's really interesting on the plot aspect of it is reading here, and I think I'm going to play a little bit of the story to get this because basically everyone has kind of the standard story combinations, but they gave Ryu, Ken, Kazuya, and Nina their own special story elements, unique story elements and rival battle cutscenes. Everyone else kind of has the generic kind of,
they have kind of the generic.
Everyone else is going to have like their own like kind of similar things, but it's cool that they actually did give a little bit, considering how large the roster is in this game. Yeah. It's cool that they at least did a little bit to give some difference.
I didn't play Kazuya and Nina's story just because I ran out of time, but I did play Ryu and Ken's, and it is a very different ending than the others.
Yes.
Like the others, either they just kind of stand around and do nothing, or they get infected by Pandora. With Ryu and Ken's story, Ryu actually gets infected by Pandora, but the Satsui no Hado in his system is like trying to counteract it, and there's this big internal battle with Pandora and the Satsui no Hado. That's really interesting. And then it's an open ending where Ryu may fucking die. What the hell? Like, he just disappears.
So, it's a fighting game.
And it ends with Ken looking really sad, and then there's, like, this black screen with text on it being narrated. And I'm like, did Ryu fucking die?
That was gonna be the tagline for the game. Street Fighter Cross Tekken, Ryu fucking dies.
It's also possible that some of these story things were going to be resolved in Tekken X Street Fighter.
Wait, yeah, okay, so
I don't know how much of the stories we're going to carry over, how much they're going to do, because it was going to be a different studio, but that's definitely a possibility.
Bringing that game that's totally coming up again. It made me think of something earlier. Why would they make two games that are pretty much similar but with different styles instead of just making one game with both styles?
Because
as like different modes.
Okay, well,
short answer, money.
Longer
answer, because you're trying to say two studios trying to come together instead of like coming like, yeah, we'll borrow the license, you borrow it, we'll borrow it, kind of things like that.
Plus, this was supposed to be how the Tekken characters played in Street Fighter.
Yes.
Tekken Cross Street Fighter was supposed to be how the Street Fighter characters played in Tekken.
So, jumping into already in things that you already have built in two different games. So, short answer is money, because selling two different games, because it was supposed to be huge. We'll get to why it was not huge here in a little bit. But
why does there have to be that much red tape with changing a camera angle?
It's more than changing a camera angle. It's a lot more,
because
it's a lot more than changing a camera angle, dude.
You triggered Thomas that. But yeah, I mean, because Street Fighter is more of a traditional 2D, whereas Tekken would be a more traditional 3D, where you're going around, you're around in an arena more of it.
I apologize for that. Set something off.
Yeah, you're fine.
Before Thomas decides to strangle Mason, let's move on to Dimps.
Dimps. Oh, I love those guys. They made Sonic Rush.
They did. Dimps has... Yeah, Dimps is... We've talked about Dimps because they made Budokai, and we did that episode. But they have an incredible library. They're a great studio.
And they're still making games.
They just released Dragon Ball The Breakers.
One of the few studios we covered.
But, like, they have... they made... By the way, they made Soul Calibur 6, if you're wondering.
Which is very good. I love Soul Calibur.
So they did that. They they have a lot of license. They've done a lot of good work. Sonic license, Street Fighter license, Dragon Ball license, a bunch of Japanese games, Soul Calibur. They made Sonic Rush. They made the Sonic, the Game Boy Sonic games.
They made Sonic Advance. They made the whole trilogy of that.
They've done a couple of Digimon games. They've done a bunch of anime games in Japan, like Naruto and Inuyasha, Yu Yu Hakusho. A bunch of the games, Gundam that we never got to see, but hey, they got made. They made a One Piece game in 2005 on the GBA.
Was it like 30 years long, like the anime is?
It's only 20 years. Get your fucking time. No. I believe that is like an RPG, though, so it could very well be fucking long.
But it is clear that, this is a studio that knows what they're doing, especially when it comes to license, that they're going to treat the license with respect. Mm-hmm. That's something that, even if some of their Dragon Ball games aren't always great and things like that, they always treat the license with great respect. The Sonic Advance games are some of the most respectful to the franchise games that have come out in a while, while pushing things forward. I love the Sonic Advance games.
Sonic Advance games are great. If we ever can find them without breaking the bank.
I've got Sonic 1 and 2 Advance.
All right, well,
I never played the advanced games, but I did play the first Sonic Rush game, which I think you said.
Sonic Rush is really good.
Sonic Rush is fantastic.
Sonic Rush is fantastic.
It's hard as balls though, and I never finished it, but it's.
See, Sonic Rush is a game that I legit could always get to one certain area and then I'd fail, and it's the area where Sonic and Blaze are doing their, you might know everything I'm going to do, but that's not going to help you since I know everything you're going to do. Strange, isn't it, scene? And you have to mash these two buttons like a motherfucker. And it always gave me finger cramps. And I'm like, I can't do this shit, man!
I always got to the Sonic level that's in the sky with like all the grind rails.
Oh yeah, that one sucks.
That one always killed me, and then the second Blaze level I could never finish.
See, I finished Sonic's story, but I didn't collect all the Chaos Emeralds.
Oh.
And I got to the final level of Blaze's story, and then it got to the finger matching thing, and I could never beat it. So.
I think it is interesting for this game and not yet canceled, but never getting a game.
Yeah, but totally.
Because a studio like Dimps made this game with clear respect for it and things like that. Again, it probably would have just been Namco making the other one because they don't. A lot of it. So really, I'm not saying it would have been bad or it wouldn't have been, there, but it probably would have just felt like a Tekken game. Whereas this game kind of feels it's definitely Street Fighter in style, but it definitely feels the amalgamation of both.
Yeah, and I mean technically, Street Fighter did get into Tekken because Akuma is in Tekken 7, like the base roster, which will never be not weird.
Yeah.
Not only is he in the base roster, he's part of the story. He's part of the narrative.
That's
Akuma
weird.
just exists in the Tekken universe because Akuma is all-knowing.
As he should be.
Right?
Something that was probably a big selling point for this game, or at least something they thought there. I mentioned before, and you brought Kuma being in the other games, but the roster in this game, it is massive.
The roster is massive, and it kicks ass. The roster is amazing.
38 starting characters. The base roster has 19 from each game. 38 characters, and then they had 5 DLC?
5 DLC.
Yeah,
yes.
which we'll get to the DLC controversy, but 5 DLC characters that are, from like, hey, here's Pac-Man in this game, or
mech.
And in like a tree mech.
Yeah, here's Mega Man. Oh, here's some cats.
Here's some.
Legit, they do have some cats.
Yeah.
And not only that, Cole McGrath from Infamous is in this game.
Yeah, Cole from Infamous is in the game.
Okay.
It is so. It's a very odd guest characters. It's cool that they were like, what if we just did some oddball things for the guest characters? Which, if you're gonna make DLC, either bring out DLC of exactly what the character that people want, and if you already have those in the game, go bonkers. Have fun.
Like
bring in Steve from Minecraft.
Exactly.
Like again, Tekken 7 is one of the first examples I think of. Who the fuck asked for Negan from The Walking Dead in Tekken 7?
Nobody, but you know what? I'm totally down. Or when before Mortal Kombat was like, look at all the guest characters and things like that. When they first had Freddy Krueger, and they added that.
That was-
holy shit.
I think a lot of people may have gotten duped when they saw that, though, because they were like, oh, it's Freddy Krueger in Mortal Kombat. This will be... Oh, crap, it's 2010 Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, a little
That
bit,
was
but
the modern.
still, it was a cool look.
That was the reboot Freddy Krueger.
Look, it was.
The movie's bad, the reboot's bad, the movie's bad, but the look of Freddy Krueger is still good.
Yeah, that's fair.
Jackie Earle Haley did a good job in that movie. That movie is just fucking dog shit.
It's very
We'll get
bad.
to that when we cover it on What the Bleep Are You
Exactly. But this roster is really good, and whether you're a fan of Street Fighter or Tekken or both, there's somebody to play.
Yeah, you have the basics like Ryu and Ken, Jin and Kazuya, Heihachi and Bison. You have all the basics in there, but then you have oddball characters like Asuka or
Bob.
or Bob, yes, or Rufus. Who the fuck wants Rufus in there? Someone, and someone's very happy.
They spared no expense to break this roster.
Hey, that's the second Jurassic Park reference in one podcast. How many can we get?
If I'd watched Jurassic Park in a long time, I would be able to make some. But the last time I watched Jurassic Park was like 3 years ago.
So this game it's very, very well received. 9 out of 10 is its average. And it seems to be loved by most people.
It's pretty much like one of the perfect fighting games.
It's a very
But
good
it did
fight.
not sell well.
Yeah.
Like, it sold over 1 million copies quickly, but that was, like, what they budgeted and what they planned. They expected to sell almost double that.
Because the problem with their predictions was that they combined Tekken and Street Fighter's audiences and like added them together, not realizing that there's probably a lot of overlap.
A lot of overlap.
So-
So they spent a lot of money to make this game. It shows. You can tell that the...
Oh yeah, you can tell the money is on screen.
Yeah.
And in the trailers because there's so much licensed music in the trailers, which
But-
is I like it, but it is weird, especially when you have like Akuma and Ogre duking it out to like some punk rock in the air, and it's like what?
So they expected it to sell 2 million units. It sold 1.7 by 2014. Capcom stated that they believe the poor performance was due to the cannibalism of the fighting game genre, meaning that too many fighting games were released in too short of a time. Makes sense. It's
Kind of.
why why more modern fighting games have as long of legs with DLC as long as they possibly can with characters and stuff like that. Because DLC means, I'll pull it back out and I'll play. I'll give you a little more money, but I'm not necessarily ready to go out and buy a full-fledged another game.
right.
Yeah, not only I mean, just a couple months before this was Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, so
One of the best fighting games of all time.
And another reason for the poor performance, in total, I mean, I'll say it's a smaller reason, but it does exist. While normally the normal version was loved, the Vita version was hated,
yeah.
averaging more like 5.5s and 6s out of 10.
The Vita version was
And it did not sell very many copies.
Going back to the
Again, because Vitas were not promoted very well, so you know what? Of course, it didn't sell because people didn't have enough Vitas.
going back to the too many fighting games thing, something kind of along those lines. Thomas, you brought up something before we started recording about a game that came out like day and day with this one, right?
Oh yeah, a game that came out day and day with this one. It's not a fighting game, so there's not a big overlap, but it is like, oh, well, that might have dominated it. It's a little known game, you might have heard of it. It's called Mass Effect 3.
Ooh.
Speaking of games with some controversies,
Ooh, yikes. That release date was a great day for controversial games.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
not to mention
But,
the
like-
hype around Mass Effect 3 was huge.
The hype was, and like nobody knew before then that it was going to
No.
be
Yeah.
as controversial as it was.
And Street Fighter Cross Tekken, people knew.
Yeah.
People were getting aware.
And that's part of a lot of it because the controversies with Street Fighter were some of it was going to be later on with the DLC because the DLCs were already on the disc.
Yeah,
Were they really?
On disc DLC, 12 DLC characters on the disc already.
they're only
So,
5.
Capcom, they wanted to keep them locked to, save hard drive spaces. People hacked in and found it. And were like, it's already on the disc. Why are we having to
Pay for it.
pay for this if it was already something I purchased? You're basically paying to unlock it.
Ooh.
Yeah, and
I could see how that wouldn't go over well.
One of my favorite stories is the developers knew this was a terrible idea. They did not want to do it. But they essentially were forced into doing it. They went up to Capcom and were like, look, especially Xbox 360 games, they're data mined really easily. People are going to find these additional characters. And Capcom's response was, why would people data mine the games? That's illegal. There's a incredibly long silence, and then they lean forward and just go, please remove the on-disc DLC. And they didn't. So
It's the red versus blue clip where he's like, wait, that's illegal.
The other criticism, while probably not as big, but definitely affected, because fighting games are going to exist with online modes. That's where at this point fighting games, that's where they grow, live, become bigger.
any arcade game, fighting, racing, all that,
Yes.
it lives or dies on
Online mode.
nowadays.
And the online tag team matches are not available on the Xbox 360 version, even though that feature was advertised and it's printed in the manual.
Whoa.
Capcom then stated this will not be fixed with a patch.
Wow.
So,
And
Not only did they shoot themselves in the foot, they consciously shot themselves in the other.
And let's also talk about gems. I don't know if they're on the Wikipedia page.
but I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. Gems were something that was added to kind of like, because it was so expensive, gems were kind of meant to be something you'd spend money on more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they would add extra effects, like you could do more damage, you would move faster, stuff like that.
Pay to win.
Exactly. It was pay to win.
Ooh.
And there was like pre-order with Best Buy and you get 500 bonus gems. No one liked it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, to the point where this did have a bit of a competitive scene. Gems were banned.
Yeah.
Damn.
Because why the fuck would you use pay-to-win mechanics in a tournament?
Setting,
It's the
yeah.
same thing that a game not that long after this come out, when the Star Wars Battlefront came out, and the first one, and pay to win was just a huge issue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
huge
which
issue.
are-
That they had to eventually fix, not on the release of Battlefront 2, but when they fixed Battlefront
later.
2.
Because when
When
Battlefront 2 became a good game.
when loot boxes and pay to win became such a big thing. And I get from a studio or a person thinking like, all right, this is the way we're going to make our money back is loot boxes.
Mm-hmm.
But loot boxes primarily prey on younger audiences or people with gambling problems.
Yeah.
And
To the
they are
point-
very
to-
predatory.
To the point where one of the NBA 2K games basically was a casino.
Yeah.
Like, that's how bad it
Or
was.
read all the Blizzard lawsuits and
Oh,
things
yeah,
like that.
all that shit.
That stuff.
And like wasn't there like a bunch of stuff in Australia where they were like outright banned?
Yes.
you know,
Yeah,
Australia.
places that ban gambling started banning
Banning
a lot of
loot
those
boxes,
because
yeah.
that's what they are. They were gambling.
They're gambling.
You're paying money for a random chance.
Like-
now, if I'm paying money to specifically choose an item, that's not
That's
there. But it
different.
was I'm
Like-
paying money to maybe get this
that.
thing I need.
Yeah, like, here's an example. Battlefront 2 versus Fortnite. Fortnite,
Yeah.
you actually pay money, like, say Batman is in the store. Ooh, I want to buy Batman. I'm doing
Right.
that. I'm going to buy Batman. You buy Batman, you have Batman forever.
And
In
that's like a thing in other games too, like racing games. There are cars that are locked by DLC. If you want that car, you can buy that specific car.
Yes.
Yeah, but in Battlefront 2, for example, or again, Street Fighter cross Tekken, you would get just a random selection of gems. So if you bought this thing and you're like, I need power gems, you get speed gems, go fuck yourself. Kind of. So,
And then also not being also the problem that comes with a lot of that in a later Dimps game. We get a little bit critical of this, so they'd have to fix it. Then making a lot of these like items, how you acquire things in game, but you can't get them in game. You only by putting the credit card. So the example I'm using is Xenoverse 2, which had medals.
Yeah.
But they had to put in ways to get medals in game, so you could do it. Now, you may be a grind, so you may have to do it over and over, and it might be easier just to be like, I'll pay $3 to get 500 of these, but you could get the 500 in game as well.
Right.
So, like, giving that option of, yeah, I might do this longer, or I might just pop the credit card in because I can. That's the difference. And
But even then, there's got to be a limit to that.
there's got to be. There's
Like,
got to be.
Again, Battlefront 2 was the most extreme
It was
example,
yeah.
where, like, to unlock Darth Vader, you had to grind for, like, 500 hours or something like that. And it's like, no one wants to do that.
Nobody wants
Yep.
to do that.
So we mentioned the Vita had lesser reviews, but it was the version that came with the DLC characters.
Yeah, they were included.
The problem is the graphics didn't look right on the Vita version, despite the fact that it shouldn't have. There shouldn't have been that big of a downgrade because Vita has pretty damn good graphics.
Like Uncharted Golden Abyss is pretty much on the same
But
level as
something
Uncharted
about
Drake's
it,
Fortune.
there were bad load times. The controls didn't work well on the Vita, which handheld fighting games have always been kind of a challenge.
Yeah.
There are way too many 3DS fighting games, and there's never been a good fighting game like to control on the 3DS. There are better games, but controlling them is a...
I don't know. I thought Smash Brothers for the 3DS controlled.
Well, that's
Really?
Smash Brothers for 3DS.
Slightly
That is-
different.
That is Nintendo's baby.
It's also
Of course,
slightly
Nintendo
different because Smash Bros. While is a fighting game, it is a different. They are those fighting games
Platform fighters and arcade fighters
are a
are
little
They're
different.
two
Yeah,
different things. That's
yeah.
fair. That's fair.
But yes, you are correct. There is Smash Bros. On.
Right.
and that's it.
But yeah, it's disappointing because I think I mentioned this on the Soul Edge podcast. Or maybe it was outside there, whatever. That I had both the Soul Calibur on the PlayStation PSP and the Tekken game on the PSP, and they both controlled really well. So Tekken games controlled well on the PSP. So the fact that this port over to the Vita it was not good is
And
kind of
that-
sad.
That might be because it controls more like Street Fighter.
That might be
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
It's possible, but
And we're talking negatively about this game a lot because of all the controversy.
the controversy.
Again, let's stress this game kicks ass.
This game is so good.
And we haven't even gotten into the one of the DLC characters.
Mason, do you want to share the DLC character?
I absolutely want to talk about Bad Box Art Mega Man. He is unironically one of my favorite fighting game characters because he is so ridiculous and hilarious. And a lot of people, when this game came out and when that DLC was announced, did not share my sentiments.
Yep.
Because this was 2012, right?
So it's before Mega Man had hit Smash Bros.
Megamind.
Right? Or had Mega Man been in?
No, Mega
No, because
Man was 2014.
yeah, that would have been 2014. was
Okay,
when-
so yeah, it would have been after. Yeah. So,
would've been-
so this is the
and like,
first time
so-
Mega Man was in a fighting game.
First time he was in. Well,
He
wait,
was
in
in
a-
Marvel vs. Capcom. He was in one of them.
oh yeah, but that was Mega Man X.
No, that was Mega Man.
Was it Mega Man?
Regular
Okay,
Mega Man was
then
in
I was
Marvel
wrong.
vs. Capcom.
Mega Man
okay.
had been in a game before. Carry on. Go back.
But I'm pretty. This would have been, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, but I'm pretty sure this was during a time when like there was a bit of a drought with Mega Man. I
Yeah.
think,
Mhm.
and for Capcom to be like, this is the new Mega Man content we're giving you. Enjoy, and it's Bad Box Art Mega Man. I could see how that would rub some people the wrong way.
Because it was intended to just be a funny joke.
Yep.
Because there was initially going to be a ton of Mega Man stuff released. There was going to be Mega Man Universe. There was going to be Mega Man Legends 3.
Oh,
so they
yeah.
put Bad Box Art Mega Man in there because they're like, hey, it's just a funny joke to add on. And if those other games had come out, yes, it would have been seen as that. But then they all got canceled. So, and because they couldn't just shelve him because he was a complete character at that point, they were like, fuck.
Just put him in there, I guess.
Yeah, and they knew they would get hate for it, and they did. So
Mega Man's fun in this game.
I mean,
He is actually
like,
a fun character.
for the for
he's
the time.
Zanabiki. Like that's what he is.
Yeah.
He's Zanabiki. He's the joke character.
But for the time, I could see why this would rub people the wrong way. But now looking back
That-
on it and having more Mega Man content in the years since. It's funny. It's just funny.
It's also, I think there was a little bit of response to it as well as like everything had to be made edgy still in this time. We're still in the later like, oh my gosh, everything has to have an edgy version of it. So immediately this weird Mega Man comes and we're like, why are we making Mega Man edgy?
I mean, it's not meant to be edgy.
It's not, but that's immediately what a lot of people's thoughts were. Which kind of leads to this game is really good when you play it.
It was originally meant to be a little edgy.
Probably.
Because originally, if you look at the concept art, originally Bad Box Art Mega Man was meant to be much more traditionally masculine and super strong. He was originally meant to look like a goddamn superhero. But they kind of went with the joke because they were like, hey, that would be more funny with the big anniversary stuff happening. Then the big anniversary stuff didn't happen. They were like, shit. So
this is all you get.
Pretty much, yeah. Again, they knew it was going to be hated, but what could they do?
Then they were like, hey, you maybe hated this, but look at all the stuff we have. And then they're like, we don't have any of the stuff. Oh no.
We don't have any of the stuff.
The stuff is gone.
Hey, this is just a funny joke to add on to that. What do you mean? What do you mean, what do I mean? It's right there. What happened? What happened?
Which I kind of think leads to the kind of the downfall of this game is that if you're sitting down and playing it, this game rocks. But every misstep leading up to this game, whether through marketing, development, misstep, advertising, whatever they did, decision makers in the executive offices, all made this game not be the success that it should have been.
Because this game should have done gangbusters.
It was the best fighting game of that year. It was given the award, Best Fighting Game.
Oh, wow.
Game Critic, I believe, is what gave it Best Fighting Game.
Oh.
Yeah, because again, this game fucks. This game is really good.
Fantastic.
This game's fun. It's a 4-player fighting game, which, God, imagine the chaos of that. But it's a blast, and especially if you do like Street Fighter and Tekken. Which, let's talk about that. The Tekken characters translate beautifully.
They do.
Like, in terms of the art style, they translate beautifully. The art style of this game is fantastic.
It is gorgeous.
It definitely leans more towards Street Fighter's art style.
Which I think is something, a lot of times, the 3D characters are probably going to look better, or look better being translated to 2D than 2D characters sometimes being translated to 3D.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. We don't really know exactly how the Street Fighter characters would have flowed necessarily in the Tekken universe and how it would have played. But I'm sure they would have looked fine. It's just more that the Tekken characters really pop in this art style.
Yeah, there are a couple of like concept art pieces for what the Street Fighter characters would have looked like in the Tekken art style. It's a much more realistic take, obviously, which you kind of were expecting with a Tekken style Street Fighter. And again, that would have been interesting, but for what we got, translating these characters, these anime as shit, but still realistic looking characters, like realistically textured, into the Street Fighter art style is amazing.
Yeah.
Specifically Jin, Heihachi, the entire Mishima family, basically, they look amazing.
The bear.
The bear looks good. Asuka, all the Tekken characters, they look
great.
Good.
It's a great looking game.
The music kicks ass.
The music does. That's about what I was leaning. The music's great. Like, there's not necessarily a track that like sticks out in my mind while playing it, but like as a whole, like you're playing along, you're like, this music's really good.
Well, that's the thing with fighting game music is that for me, I'm bad about it. It doesn't stick out in my mind while I'm playing it because I'm more focused on beating the snot out of my opponent. But then you go back and listen to it, and you're like, "Oh, this fucks!
Yeah,
like this is good.
This is good music." I mean, look, there's still nothing better than playing a Smash Bros. Match with one winged angel playing in the background. Like, that's still the best thing you can do. So yeah,
no,
music matters.
The best thing you can do in Smash Brothers is play with "Open Your Heart" blaring in the background.
But yeah, this game's really good. It had a lot of controversies, a lot of issues leading up, and sadly, that's why we didn't get more of this idea.
And the game's kind of gotten a second life on Steam.
It has.
Because if you look at the mod support for that game, holy hell. There is so much mod support. They made a sexy Blanca. I don't know how I feel about that, but they did it.
They made that, and also it's pretty easily available. Like, yeah, look up. It's not expensive in the used market. Like, this game exists, and you can play it. And
I was gonna say I found my copy for like $20.
Yeah, it's not a very expensive.
And
copies.
I got it perfect condition, manual and everything. So,
but yeah,
It's not a hard game to find.
no.
no, it is not. And the development of this game is so interesting. That's what we've mostly talked about because the development is so interesting. Here's another interesting thing about that. There was a live action short film made for this movie.
Oh.
It was Ryu and Ken fighting Kazuya. The directors of that, it just to show how hard they went on the marketing for this game. The directors of that went on to direct some like very famous action movies. Like,
Wow.
Like, I believe one of them went on to direct John Wick.
Holy crap.
Yeah, like, I could be wrong, but
They
I believe
spent so much money on this, which again, they had expectations. We're going to sell 2 million units.
Yeah, I mean, they expected this to sell like a bajillion copies.
And potentially if they had, not had some missteps
Right.
and had reason for people to not buy it. Bad box art Mega Man is a funny joke, but that's if you're trying to get the Mega Man fans, that's a reason to go, I don't want to buy that.
Yeah.
I don't want to support that.
The
The
gems,
DLC stuff, that's a
DLC,
reason I
the
don't want to
gems.
support it. The gems, the marketing, not having things, that's a reason. They gave a reason, even if it's not even miss out on a bad game. It gave a good game. Sorry, miss out on a good game. You give a reason to not go out and buy it, to not go and spend your money, and people are like, I don't want to either support that or be a part of that or those sort of things. And sadly, this fantastic game suffered because of it.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but that's what corporate greed can do. And
Exactly.
a lot of it is just corporations being greedy fucks. And like, it sucks, but sometimes products get caught in the crossfire, and this was one of them.
So yeah. On this podcast, we like to ask 2 major questions of all the games we play. The first one is, how does this game hold up?
I mean, we've talked. This game fucks.
Is this the most modern game we've played at this point?
I think so,
think
yeah.
Yes.
Go Vacation would be the only other one that I think, but that's
Or
late 2000s.
the WWE.
No, WWE was, I think, 2011.
Yes, so that was the PS3 as well.
So
but yeah,
this was 2012. So yes, I believe it's the most modern game.
most modern we played.
even though it's still like
So,
10 years old.
Of the other ones, it's absolutely, it should hold up better than a lot of the games there, and yes, it does.
It
Holy
does.
cow!
This
I
game's
think-
really good.
I think it's going to take like twice as long for the 360 PS3 era to age as it has the generation before.
I mean, it depends what game you're talking about. Heavenly Sword has aged incredibly.
Well, I mean,
And by incredibly, I mean it has aged very poorly.
I mean, like the vast majority.
It depends on it. It depends on kind of what genre. A lot of the platformers did not age particularly well at times.
Yeah.
Look at some of the Uncharted games. Look at God of War 3 has a lot of mechanics that aged very poorly.
Yeah, that would have been around that era, wouldn't it? I forgot about that.
So like it depends on the game and kind of what was being advanced at that time. What type of game was advancing further
yeah.
versus what type of game had already kind of hit its stride.
Right.
And I think fighting games had kind of had a lot of their advancements in the PS2 era.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the trial and error had kind of like faded.
Yeah.
Which we saw here because they'd already made Street Fighter 4 and then basically plugged this into that engine.
Right.
So this game holds up fantastically.
Yeah, this game holds up amazingly. This game
And I think it's going to hold up for quite a while because 2D fighters usually do hold up for a long time. It's why people are still playing Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, people still play Street Fighter 2. People are still playing Mortal Kombat 2, for God's sake. People are still, people are still playing King of Fighters.
Yeah.
Like the original. And the
Sean
original
is still
was
playing
not good.
Shaq Fu.
I think you're the only one still playing shit.
Probably. But yeah, pretty easy to say this game holds up. Our second,
Probably held up the best of any game we've played.
It's
it's the newest as well. So you know.
so
By
that-
default.
that
Yeah.
makes
By
sense.
default.
But yes, it has held up better than Phantom Menace.
What are you talking about? That was obviously the greatest game we've played so far. Can't say that with a straight face. Jesus, fuck.
Yeah.
Oh no, my apologies. This guy did not. The director of the short film did not go on to make. Did not go on to direct John Wick.
Okay.
He went on to choreograph the fights
That
in
makes sense.
Shang-Chi.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. That.
Okay, so still pretty prestigious.
So yeah, still pretty fucking prestigious.
That's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Again, this game. God, this game's so cool. I wish the marketing didn't fuck it.
Well, here's why that leads great into our second question that we ask of every game. Would this game deserve a reimagining or a remake in a modern setting?
I mean,
Just repackage it.
I was gonna say legit, just repackage it. Say, hey, all the DLC's included.
Yeah.
Mega Man stuff has come out, so bad box art Mega Man isn't gonna feel like as much of a kick in the dick.
Just repackage it. Hell, repackage it with a few other. You could add even. You can find more since Tekken X Street Fighter didn't happen. What guest characters were you going to put in there? What were we going to get from Namco's library that was going to be in those?
Exactly. Like, just hell, for God's sake, repackage this, relaunch it, get rid of the gems mechanic, which you already did basically with the patch, and just maybe if it's successful, then do Tekken Cross Street Fighter.
But even if you don't, there's an
even
absolute
if you
lane to
don't,
still
there's still-
to help. Like, why would Namco want those sort of things? Well, yeah. Give a certain percentage. It could be a pretty good size percentage of some of the things to get some of their roster from some of their other license game and things like that. Like that.
Yeah, like again, like Sean said, get some other guest characters in there.
Like, would I like to see maybe a Soul Calibur character? That's something that you could do.
Honestly, is it weird because it's like Mega Man and Pac-Man? I'm like, get Klonoa in there.
Yeah.
Klonoa. Look, that would actually kick ass.
Get
I
Chris
would love
Redfield. Still my
Leon
favorite
Kennedy.
thing about how he's in Marvel vs. Capcom.
Get in Leon Kennedy. He hasn't been in a fighting game yet, has
True.
he?
No.
I mean, when you first asked this question, like my gut reaction was to just say, yeah, I mean, you could port it, and that'd be the most that you could. I think that could be the most that you could do. But I think the more that you guys have talked about it, the more that I'm starting to lean towards, yeah, take another crack at it.
Yeah, even if you don't take it can't just be a port, just an updated version. Like
Again, just genuinely like, look, Capcom, you re-release Street Fighter 2 every time that someone sneezes. Just re-release this like Super Street Fighter Cross Tekken Ultra Fuck Edition.
Yeah.
Like, just something.
Street Fighter Cross Tekken Turbo.
Or it's just something like, because look, we know that Street Fighter's coming out this year. We know Tekken's probably coming out early next year. Or late this year, and we haven't.
I believe it's this year.
Is it officially? I didn't know if we got a release date yet.
I think at the end of the last trailer was 2023, so like fall 2023.
Yeah, so there's time in between. You know what would be a great thing to release in between? Like, hey, do you like these two franchises? Here's a port. A port that has all the stuff there, and let people kind of play it. I mean, you may be running into the worry of like, oh my gosh, would it cannibalize their own license? Probably not. But
No.
like, this is something that could be like fun. Like, I know that on the DS they released a game called Dragon Ball Extreme Butoden, but with it they were like, here is the SNES Super Butoden as well. It's the only time it's ever been released in America. Was this game there was as an add-on with
like
this
a
thing.
game within a game.
It was another game. Like, hey, we also were going to give you this with it, and it's like that's a cool thing. So like, this could be a good marketing. You could use this game that you failed in marketing to actually market even more your new games.
Market it better.
But two franchises kind of shaking hands, being like, yeah, we know both of our games are going to slap and everyone's going to buy them both. Why don't we market them both together a bit?
Just Street Fighter 6 ends with Ryu meditating, Kazuya comes up or some shit, and then it's like, play the Street Fighter Cross Tekken relaunch.
It would not be, obviously you'd have to spend money, you have to do there to update it, but like a PS5 or an Xbox update would be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to like a Switch update as well. Like if they want to put it on Switch, graphically.
Honestly, at this point, the Switch could probably do.
It wouldn't be opposed to it, but like I don't always think about like I'm going to play fighting games when I think about the Switch necessarily. So, but if they're wanting like, hey, play it on the road, and then go buy Street Fighter for the PS5,
Yeah, get one for each console. Get Tekken for the Xbox, Street Fighter for the PS5, and get Street Fighter Cross Tekken for the Switch.
But there are a lot of ways that this game could live on very easily. I just don't think, sadly, I don't think that they think there's a market for this game.
No, which again is sad because this game rules,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think it's going to.
Yeah. I think they thought they had another Marvel vs. Capcom in terms of popularity on their hands.
Yeah,
They didn't. Missteps aside, they probably weren't going to have that even without the missteps.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, Marvel in general rules the fucking world. So.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Tekken and Street Fighter don't necessarily rule the world; they rule the fighting game world.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're into fighting games, you can just drop Ryu or Kazuya into something, and I mean I'll lose my shit, but I'm a whore, so and just yeah. So this is an excellent combination. It's just not one that like will appeal to the public. So maybe don't spend a lot of money on it.
Or make a deal with one of the make it an Xbox Game Pass or a PlayStation PlayStation Now, something that drops on like one of the things that works with it as a hype up to it. There are ways to make this and port it without spending too much money, but also kind of hyping up your franchises again as they go into new territories.
Just shell out a couple bucks to port it to PlayStation Plus or the Xbox Game Pass or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think genuinely that will probably be where it really grows.
Would be because it has, as we said, it has found some life on Steam. So, but yeah, that's Street Fighter X Tekken, Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Hey, I finally might get the name right. What do you guys think? Did you enjoy this game? Have you played it? Which character do you use? Are you like Mason and are you obsessed with bad box art Mega Man? Any of these questions you can answer and tell us what you think by sending us an email to bleepyouplaying@gmail.com. That's bleepyouplaying@gmail.com. Send us a little email and hey, we might read it on one of these podcasts. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple iTunes, wherever you are listening to this, give us those follows, those likes. I know specifically with Apple, listen on Apple Podcasts, 5 stars, and type out some words because that will help our podcast grow here. That'll help us reach new audiences.
Even if you say, how dare you, Soul Calibur 5 was obviously the best one. You're wrong, but you can type it out if you want to.
You can send us a
No one's stopping you.
passionate defense of it in an email, and you know what? We'll read it. But we're probably going to take a little break, or like at least a week break in between for the next episode, as we're kind of hitting our last 2 episodes of the finale, so we want to make sure we've played each game to their fullest so we can really talk about it. But we'll be back here in a couple of weeks with something insane.
Get it? Get good, you slut!